this guy? Now he's critiquing women and sex. Oh, Lord have mercy. This is the thing. He's talking about purity in this video and women and purity, but listen to the music he listens to.
I got an email from a girl in her 20s who was offended by my...
So, there's going to be some... Okay, first, fair use again, fair use. But this is going to be highly offensive to women. Like, these men, they're really putting this negative energy, this very bashing energy against women out there. And I used to go at the black manosphere, and I guess it's time for me to start going at the white manosphere, because his talking points are that. Whether he calls himself that or not, that's what he is. Like, it's very anti-women. I have to listen to my good music right now, because God knows I'm going to need good energy when I go through this video. No, you can't come up here.
Video called Sex Equals Marriage. She tried to justify herself to me. She had a failed relationship, and she tried to explain to me how she is now more experienced.
By the way, this is a man who literally eats raw meat and blood, animal blood. So, on a spiritual level, people who understand what I'm speaking of, when you take on that type of animalistic trait, right? Not cooking food, not cooking meat, eating blood. There's a type of mentality that comes along with that type of... No, you cannot come up here. Lifestyle. Let me continue.
Experience that sex, as in something good came out of it. This made me think that there are actually women out there who believe that they can get better at sex. Listen carefully. All women must understand this. What do you think is the most unattractive and off-putting thing you could possibly say to a guy? Any idea? That you are good at sex? To us, this only means one thing. You're a slut and you're worthless. Could you theoretically, as a...
So, if a woman is experienced in having sex, she's a slut and she's worthless. But when a man does the same thing, he's the king, he's the prodigy child of the universe. He's what? What is he? What is he?
Women learn how to please a guy better by having a lot of experience. Possibly a tiny bit, but most likely not, because sex is not complicated. It comes naturally. Even if you could, every man on earth would still choose somebody who is inexperienced, ideally a virgin, over you. Once you lose your virginity, your value goes down to here. Even if you would learn everything there is to learn.
I just want to say some things to women and young girls. Your value is not placed in your vagina. Get up here. Come on. I'm not going to be... You can't do this when I'm doing a video every time. Get up here. Come on. Let's go. Your value as a woman is not placed in your vagina. That's not what makes you a valuable woman. This kind of mentality. Come on. Get up here. This kind of mentality, it breeds a really sick mental illness, because... Lay down. Because if, let's just say a woman is a virgin, right? And she gets raped and she loses her virginity, right? The psychology of that, what would devastate that woman, if you have a societal construct that tells women that the only value they have is whether their vagina has been penetrated or not. It's a very sickening mental state or statement to give young women or women in general, as if to say, you consciously, choosing to be a woman who educates herself, finds a spiritual path that connects with her, and she builds herself, right? Continually builds herself. But instead of her being like musically inclined, or come on, you guys, stop. Instead of her being musically inclined or somebody that is into sports, like you see some very powerful women that are in sports, they're building themselves up as a woman, energetically, spiritually, and things like that. Because anybody that gets into sports like that, they usually are creative in other ways as well. So a woman who's an artist, a woman who is a poet, a woman who is a scientist, an architect. I mean, I can go on and on and on. So basically, this man boils down every achievement that women make in general, or young girls, when they're going through school and they're doing stuff, right? And they're building themselves up. And they have loving parents, and their parents are trying to inculcate things in this little girl. And they're building this little girl up to become something, right? Maybe she's going to become the next president, or she's going to become the next senator, or you name it, okay? The next scientist that comes up with life-saving, a life-saving cure to cancer. Let's just say that. But she gets raped in her lifetime. And then to tell this little girl that her only value, doesn't matter that she is creating or has the potential to create a cure for cancer. It doesn't matter that she's the next world leader. It doesn't matter that she's the next Olympiad. It doesn't matter that she's the next artist of the century. It doesn't matter that she's any of those things. Right? To this man and these men, her only value is her vagina. And whether her vagina has been penetrated only by him or by multiple men. That's some sick shit you're trying to place upon young women or little girls or even older women. Get out of here with that dumb shit. You need to stop. Let's continue what he's saying.
About sex, your value would go up this much, whereas somebody who is innocent and pure would always be at the top, because that is what is actually attractive to a male human being. It doesn't matter what the fuck.
If I felt that my only value from childhood into womanhood, or the only thing that I could feel was value, is that my vagina was not violated, right? Because I was raped at 3 years old. Imagine if I believed what this guy and other men say. Imagine if I believed that the only value I had was whether I was able to keep my vagina pure, right? Which at 3 years old, how was I going to fight the person that violated me off? I couldn't. I didn't have the strength. Okay? Just imagine if my mind was in that box where I felt as though nothing in my life, or no matter what type of woman I became, would be valueless because of that. What kind of message is this sending to women to think that the only value they have is in their vagina? Or whether they can have children in the future? Because a lot of children who are violated like that, it does something to their ovaries. It does something to their vaginal tract. It does something to the uterus. It causes damage. It causes toxicity in their body. I mean, there's a lot of spiritual effects that come along with that type of thing, of violation. So to sit up here and tell women their only worth is whether they keep themselves pure. What if women were running around saying, if you men have been violated and you get raped by another man and he rapes you anally, right? Let's just say that happened, right? What if we were sitting saying that if that happened to you, you had no value as a man? What if the tables were turned and women were saying the exact same thing these men are saying? That you no longer have value. And that the only way that you could have value is if you keep your anal untouched, right? Or that you never get violated, and that something like that never happens to you. Imagine the outrage these men would feel if women were running around saying those kind of things, right? Imagine how they would feel if we told them that their only value would be if that never happened to them. And even if a woman chooses to have sex with multiple partners, why can't she have her experiences? You men are having your experiences, right? Nobody is telling these men that they can't have these experiences and putting judgmental statements on them as if they're not pure. Imagine if women did that. Imagine if the tables were turned and men had to be pure and they could not have had sex prior to getting married or prior to doing any of these things, right? Let's say that happened and the tables were turned and they were persecuted. Let's say they were stoned to death. Let's say all these things were happening to them, what has happened to women in the past. Women were put to death literally for not having, or even being raped. There was a situation in the Middle East, and it was when YouTube was first new, right? A young girl, teenage girl, she was stoned to death by her uncle and her uncle's sons because somebody in their family, it was a male in their family, raped her and violated her. And they considered her unclean. They literally put her in a hole, put dirt around her up to her neck, and stoned her in her head to death. This is before YouTube took this kind of stuff off, because initially people were posting stuff you would not believe on YouTube. And that was one thing that was put on YouTube, was this young teenage girl being stoned to death, and from no choice of her own. She didn't choose to have sex with this family member. This family member put himself upon her, raped her, and instead of putting him to death, they put her to death. Imagine if the tables were turned and women could do that, or were doing that to men. Imagine the outrage these men would feel.
Learn, because you will always be at the bottom and not desirable. This is why I said that as a girl you have to be very careful who you choose as a partner, because it has to be somebody for life. Once a girl is damaged, she will start dressing like a slut. Sure, you may attract some loser who watches porn, but a healthy man is not even gonna come close to you. This is one of the ways they destroy families nowadays. They brainwash young men.
Sorry, this is what's really unfortunate, is the fact that he's making the statement of as if he's a virtuous man, as if men who think like him are virtuous. There's no virtue in this. There's no virtue in the way that this man is talking. None. He's not. Anybody with the right frame of mind would see this person and see all the discrepancies in his speech. They would understand that everything he's saying is built on his own weak ego. And I say weak ego because he has to, or feels that he has to have a pure woman or a virgin. Let's just say he did have a virgin, right? But in the type of society that these men want to build, and the way that they want to set people's progress back, they want to set the women's movement back. They want to set women back. They want to put women back in chains. They want to put women back in chastity belts. They want to put women back in doing all these things. But what happens? Because back then, when that lifestyle was lived, when other cultures of men raided those villages, raided those countries, took those countries over, conquered those countries, they raped these other men's women. What would he have the strength to take that? Would he have the strength to take that? I don't think these guys who talk like this understand completely what historically happened back then by other men. So would he discard his wife and say, okay, well, she was violated, let me move on and find the next virgin? Do you see this mental illness in this talk?
Women to gather a lot of sexual experiences as if it's beneficial. There's a lot of pressure to do this. Later, when they decide to have a family in their late 20s or early 30s, they are so damaged that it's almost impossible for them to be loyal. Of course, another reason why we instinctively don't want to have sex with somebody who has already had sex is because in nature, they would most likely have children. And men especially usually will not want to take care of somebody else's children. My grandmother once told us a story from her village. There was an incredibly beautiful girl, and she chose to be together with the ugliest guy in the village. She did this because she believed that he will not leave her and that he will always appreciate her. She was right. They had children and lived a happy life together. I hear similar stories more and more nowadays. It's unfortunate because we should not be living in this fear that somebody is going to leave us.
To young girls and women, just, now is a time of reflection, and it's about building yourself. Ultimately, most women would like to be in relationships with men that they feel compatible with and that they feel that they could build a life with. But when you have men who think like this is their thought process. You can't. It's like a brick. It's like a brick wall, right? Like a 2-layer thick brick wall. You can't punch through it. You can't get through it with your bare hands. You can't do anything to knock the wall down to get that person to see where you're coming from. And since you cannot do that, and since you cannot get through to them, the only option you have is just to build yourself up. Build yourself up and hope that the divine creator gets through to these men. Because I've been on here for, excuse me, I've been on here since 2008 fighting these men, right? And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see any progress. I don't see any progress with these type of men. I already know there's good men out in the world. I know there are men who protect women. They protect their children. They protect their mothers. They protect their aunts. They protect the women in their lives, right? And I know that they're not sitting here being judgmental, and they allow these women to live their lives, go through chaotic things that because I believe in reincarnation, and I believe when you reincarnate, sometimes you bring whatever happened to you in the past into this life, and or things that ever have happened to you in childhood. You have to go through that pain. You have to work through it, and you have to find your center, right? I haven't seen any of these men doing the work. I don't feel that any of them do the spiritual work to get the progress that they need to knock out this mentally ill thinking process. If anything, they're getting worse. It's very sad. It is so depressing to see men like this trying to give women and or other men advice. It sickens me.